Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Allison Manley, the Director of Marketing here at Canopy. And today we're hosting the first of 8 webinars just for UCSF. And this one today is about managing multiple editors. I do understand that your UCS servers do a masterful job at blocking emails. So this morning I did become aware that some folks did not get confirmation emails or reminders with links to the Zoom rooms. So we're working on fixing that in the future with the rest of the webinars in this series. But I just wanted to reassure you that if you did sign up for future ones, I do have your info. You are signed up and we're working to fix the issue so that you can get the reminders with the Zoom rooms. But I think I will also have Jill Wolters, who a big shout out, thank you to Jill, who's been helping us set up this series. I'll have her post to your internal listserv as well as a backup, just to make sure you do have the links. A little bit about Canopy. Canopy designs, builds, and supports websites for clients who want to make a positive impact. And a bit about Anne, our presenter today. She's the founder and CEO of Canopy, and she helps create clarity around project needs and turns client conversations into actionable outcomes. And because Canopy loves helping clients with sustainable sites, we are offering a 25% off any growth plan, which is just a small bite targeted plan to increase the impact of your website. And you can email us at hello@canopy.com at any time, and we will help you with that. So you're likely very familiar with Zoom in these days of quarantines, but a reminder that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if at any time throughout Anne's presentation you have a question for her, please enter it there. I will be collecting them. And when she's done the presentation, which will be about 15 minutes, we'll address all the questions at the end. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Anne.
Okay, thanks, Allison. So as you already know, my name is Anne Stefanik, and I'm founder and CEO of Canopy. And I'm honored to kick off our summer series with UCSF. So just so you folks know, Allison covered off a lot of this stuff, and I just wanted to let you folks know that we really believe your website should last 10 years or more, because if you focus on continuously taking care of your website, it really should look better year 3 than it did on launch day. So we've worked with UCSF since about 2013, and it's my personal mission to make websites really easy to understand and effective. So we're offering these trainings to you folks to power up our cohorts over at UCSF. So let's dive in. As Allison mentioned, just as a heads up, we do have 8 Wednesdays. It's there every other Wednesday of different stuff that you can sign up for, and tell your friends about it. We'll also be keeping all the videos as an archive for you folks that you can access later on. And you can sign up at that link or share it with your friends. Today we're going to cover why should we have all these people involved, the workflows to help manage things, how to create a playbook, how to create an editorial calendar, and leave some time for Q&A. So let's dive in. Why multiple editors? First, many hands make light work. So the more content is really one of the biggest challenges in any project. So the more hands, the more content can be written. It also allows for diverse perspectives. More writers, more diverse perspectives create inclusivity in your content. And best of all, there's a shared workload. Content is a lot of work. So having a team that contributes really helps move that mission forward. So when we talk about how to organize content, we like to talk about workflows. So the first thing is, how do we define the flow? So we want to think about who actually creates the content. Think high level. It doesn't have to be like one person, but it could be a role or it could be a department. And then you want to think about who edits and reviews that content. As you probably know, it's always good to have a second set of eyes on things, but it's also helpful to define the role for that, so it's not just ad hoc. You also want to look at who has the authority to actually approve and publish it. Does it have to go to PR? Does it have to go to a certain person to review? So defining all of those things help create clarity. There's also the factor of how is it going to be delivered. So it's often easier to actually collaborate in a Word document than it is in a Drupal website. Drupal's very powerful, but often just knowing that if you can leave it till the last step, then you can create all that space for collaboration. So some example, this is an example of an editorial workflow that we built up with one of our clients. So first, we do a brain dump. We find it's really important to create space so we can just let it flow, we can record, we can listen, and really ask questions. You want to ask questions like, who is the audience for this? What is the purpose for this? What are you trying to get out of this? And then let the ideas flow. Then the request would go to the editor. It's always helpful to actually define the editor role, which is the person who actually writes the content. They'll review the content and finalize the content. Once you have the editor that's drafted, in this case, it would be sent back to the stakeholder for internal review to make sure we're on the right page, make sure we have all the right details. And in tandem, it'd be sent to the web team to look at it from an design perspective. What images do we want to add? And what do we want to take into consideration from a technical SEO or an SEO standpoint? Then we go to the edits. So this is when it comes back, and here is usually a final sweep through to fix or update anything, to get some specific details from the stakeholder that might have left them out the first time. And then finally, that content is delivered. We do all of this at Canopy offline, like off of a Drupal web, like not on the website. And so when it comes to the final step, then it goes to be entered. And usually at that point, the site administrator, which is a normal human, can just go enter everything perfectly, has all the information from the images to the metadata, and pulls it all together. A thing with your Drupal site is permissions. You may have heard this. So when you're thinking about managing multiple editors, you want to think about who actually really needs access to your website. Because with Drupal, permissions can be unnecessarily complex. So what you really need to think about is like, what should be crafted, edited, and finalized in that Word document versus what should be automated on the website. Sometimes it makes more sense for the automation if you have a defined workflow and you have multiple roles. Sometimes it's just easier to do in tools that people are really familiar with. It's just really important, more than anything, if what is happening and what access do they need. For example, if you just have someone coming in to publish blog posts and that's it, that's probably all they need access to. And those permissions can be defined in Drupal on a real granular level. So the most important thing is that you have to remember that not everybody actually needs the power to publish, and that will help you maintain some quality control. With a larger decentralized content editors, this is where it's really important to think about roles and permissions. And I can tell you we can do a whole webinar on that, so we'll leave that for now. Because we want to talk now about how to create a playbook. So what is a playbook? A playbook is simply a content style guide. It gives all the writers the guidance how to speak as a solidified unit, and it'll cover everything from qualitative properties to the mechanics of grammar. So we're going to cover these things, and your playbook will include these things. We'll review these quickly, but we'll talk through. It should reiterate your mission, explain voice and tone, list words to use or avoid. We want to talk about how to use first-time usage of words versus subsequent usage, proper spelling and usage of brand or any words, really. We actually want to outline all the acronyms so people know what they stand for and define those grammatical mechanics. So we'll walk through each one of these. So first off, the mission. The mission really needs to drive the tone and the voice, and really it provides the need for the style guide. If you don't have a mission statement, that's a bit of work to do, but it's really valuable work to do. And once you have that, that really helps define the rest of the steps throughout your whole organization or department. So it's good to have this repeated in the guide because you want to share the guide with new employees or contractors, and also potentially just to even refresh the memories of your current employees. Things change pretty quickly, especially on the web, and with all the different movements that are happening now, it's super important to make sure that we create our inclusive language. So that helps with when we clarify our mission. All right, so let's talk about the difference between voice and tone. So voice is how you are speaking as an organization. And tone is the manner in which you are speaking. The easiest analogy I have is when I'm talking to my husband, I always use the same voice, me, Anne. But the tone is very different when I'm texting him from the store to say, "Yay, there's toilet paper. Should I get 2 bundles?" Or it's not the same tone that we'd be talking over dinner. So that's the difference in the two. Speaking a little bit about words to avoid and words to use. So words to use helps really build common vocabulary that tie things together. They identify meaningful words that provide value. Words to avoid are terms and phrases that just generally should be avoided. You also want to guide your team with clarity as to why those words are to be avoided. For example, we're big advocates of diversity and inclusion in our content strategy. So our playbook lists words that are inclusive or not inclusive, so people can really see. Even in our technical writing, we have operationalized making sure that we're creating inclusive content. For example, as you know, with the rise again and really the importance of Black Lives Matters, we're taking a look at our technical content, and there's a word called blacklist or whitelist. And as a community, our efforts are to change those to allowed and denied. So little things change, and that's why it's important to always refresh and keep momentum on your playbook. So let's talk about first time versus subsequent usage. So when you use different acronyms or different phrases, you often don't have to repeat the phrase the same time. The first time you say the full phrase, and in subsequent phases, you say it shorter. So as an example, OSHR, so UCSF OSHR Center for Integrative Medicine, and every other time, it can be UCSF OSHR Center. Okay, let's talk spelling. So spelling, things can be spelled very differently in branding, and as well as there is the concern for acronyms. So for this that you want to think about, within UCSF, there's various, for example, this is a great example, Anchor Studies is one of our clients. Anchor is all capitalized, and it's the Anchor Study, all caps. And the reason it's that way is because it's an acronym. It means anal cancer, ACL outcome research. So within that, there's an acronym within their acronym. So it's really important to define all of that so people know that every time they use the Anchor Study, it should all be in caps. And understanding the why helps people really sink in and make sure they don't mess it up. Okay, grammar. So there is a lot of ways that you'll see grammar inconsistencies. And so the biggest thing is in your playbook, have a guideline. For example, do you use Oxford comma, which is the difference between this, comma, and this, or this, and this? How do you format dates? Do you use capitalization? How do you write time? If you have folks that come from different countries, for example, I'm Canadian, I like to sneaky use in places or format my dates differently. So it was really important that we decided we were going to write using our English and American to train all of our people to write that so it was consistent. Okay, don't forget, you want to remember to give access to all your writers, editors, and publishers. Often publishing it on the web somewhere where they can see it is a real easy place. You also want to review it annually. Terms, goals, or even your audience may have changed. So it's really important to take a look at things on a regular basis and really audit and edit. And of course, keep your language inclusive. We have another webinar that Amy June is going to put on called How to Write Inclusive Content that will go over this in detail. Okay, folks, we're going to now talk about how to build an editorial calendar. So first off, you really want to make a plan and a schedule. Overall, you're going to take your workflow and understanding you're going to need so much time for revisions and so much time for reviews. That'll start identifying the different roles. But in this calendar, then you want to start mapping this out to say who's going to be doing the writing, are these going to be doing the editing, when is this due? When is the desired publish date? Oh my goodness, let's pull all these together here. I forgot to click. Let's click here, people. Click. So we want to talk about who is actually writing. Is that the same person as the editorial? Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not. Sometimes like we have a copywriter and then they'll go to the editor. We also want to talk about due dates. Both due is when is it due to the editor for reviewing and when is the publish date. And then what is often overlooked by a lot of our team members is what are all the assets? Do we need images? Do we need videos? And making sure that we have all the SEO considerations taken care of. So here's a bit of an example of what you can see. We honestly build this out in a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll list all the different components. We're happy to share our content calendar and our editorial calendar. So if you would like that, just feel free to email us or let us know in this chat or whatnot, or just send me a quick email. It's ann@canopy.com, and we can send you an actual Excel document that you can see with some examples filled out. But generally, you're looking at who the author is, what the topic is, what the title is, what the description is, what is the assets required, what's the type, what's the persona, which stage is it? Because content, there's all different types of content too. There's your awareness content, which is when they're just learning about you, versus you have the consideration content when they're deciding whether they're going to actually engage with you. And then you have your decision content, which is actually facilitating the final decision. So if we could go real deep into that as another whole webinar, but overall, an editorial calendar starts to get your hands wrapped around all the content that needs to be published and the cadence. So I get really excited about this, and sometimes I talk a little fast, so I'm trying to take a deep breath. But that, I believe, concludes our very short little presentation. So I wanted to just open it up for some questions.
Okay. We have a couple questions here. So the first one, how far out would you plan an editorial calendar?
Well, with COVID days, I think that quarterly is appropriate. I would usually say, you might even look at it sooner than that, but it's a living document. So what I would say is you'd want to sit down every quarter for sure and really evaluate it, every week on an ongoing basis, just to make sure that actually things are getting done. But yeah, about a quarter, I would say.
Okay. What do you find is the biggest challenge when introducing workflows or editorial calendar?
Humans. In the sweetest way, I always say, we've been doing websites for years at Canopy, and I always say, when people say, what's the biggest challenge to my website? I'm always like, content and humans. The tech stuff, the design stuff, the strategy stuff, it's actually not that hard, but the challenge is humans, because they have feelings and perceptions. And when you add humans and content together, like you're doing when you're managing multiple editors, there's a lot of room for chaos. But I think the biggest thing is about creating a plan, creating a calendar. And the biggest challenge once you have all that in place is usually the editor's review by date. That one often gets missed. So if you're going to keep an eye on anything, your editor role often is usually just busy people. So it's often helpful just to, while you're getting this all in place, book a regular meeting with that editor on a regular basis to help keep momentum. It might be just a co-work session. It might be just to empower them. It might be a regular check-in that helps them keep momentum. But the biggest slippage can usually happen just the editor gets really bogged down with a lot of priorities. So that's where I would say is the human needs support to make it really easy. Good question.
Okay. Here's another one. How do you manage the tone with so many people? Is it enough to list out the words to use and avoid?
Yeah, this is definitely tricky. There's always going to be variances, right? You want the voice of the group to be in line, but it's okay if there's slight variances, right? You're going to, once you have a voice and tone and then you see something that's not in that voice and tone, it becomes very glaringly obvious. Like people, Allison and Anne, we have a voice and tone. And sometimes when we have a new project manager, they'll submit something, we'll be like, oh, look at that. That's totally not in our tone. That doesn't sound like us. You know, our message is meant to be very friendly and helpful and supportive. And, you know, we honestly just want to help, right? So when someone comes across as very demanding and aggressive and we're like, whoa, that's not our vibe at all. So usually once you get it in a group, then you do notice that you'll have some consistency just by the nature of getting that. And also, your editor really is kind of that pillar. So leaning on your editor to facilitate edits so that people can learn. We're big fans of let's redline it in so they can actually see our changes and learn from the changes versus just straight up editing. That's been very helpful to actually train the other content contributors to really follow the voice and tone. So.
Okay, we have another question. We also use Google Sheet for our editorial calendar, but oftentimes find it cumbersome. It is also hard to track topics in an easy way. It is a manual process of counting by topics. Do you have experience with using systems like Salesforce Marketing Cloud and or CoSchedule?
Yeah, there's lots of tools. We personally at Canopy use HubSpot for some of that, where we can start to tag by pillar or by persona. There's always a tool for it. And so I definitely agree that the Google Sheet is not super ideal, or the Word document. The nice thing I do like about it though, it is collaborative. If it is just you know, you may want to just tone down this Google Sheets, but I mean, overall, there are tools out there. I know most of our clients, they kind of end up in Google Sheets or an Excel document because of the complexity of some of the tools, and they don't do all the things they want to do. But I know there's different ways to schedule stuff. I know that you can use like Hootsuite or those things for social. Allison, you kind of dig into that a little bit. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, we actually do use a pretty comprehensive Google spreadsheet for our editorial calendar as well. The great thing about it, of course, is the collaboration, as Anne said, but you're right that it can be tricky, and it is tough to assign tasks. So we actually, because just leaving a comment in a Google spreadsheet, if it's really vast and there's a million cells, people can miss the comments pretty quickly. So we actually do a combination of a Google spreadsheet, and then we use Teamwork as sort of our project management tool, and we assign tasks to various people to write. And then we do have a weekly meeting to check in to make sure that everyone's on top of their task for whatever piece of content we're trying to do. And so that was the last question. Are there any other questions anyone has? I'm going to type them in. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Oh, Anne, did you have something?
No, I was just going to actually flip way back here if I can find my screen here. Pardon the dizziness here. We'll see. Actually, I should probably get out of this way and do it this way. Because we love training you folks, and we understand right now bite-sized content is best. So if we invite you to join us on all these other elements. But if you have stuff you want to learn about, we would love to hear from you. So if you're like, wow, I really want to know how to like manage my media, or I'm really curious about, those Drupal, permissions or stuff, we're an open book. We've been partners with UCSF for a long time. We have clients in here. We have friends in here. So if there is anything else, pass it along to Jill, who can then filter it up to us. And thank you so much for having us. We're really grateful to be partners with UCSF, and yeah, I'm an open book too. So ping me about anything. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Enjoy your Wednesday. See you in a few weeks.